I like StreamYard as a system. But
Now it's live.
we'll start with the live. Hello, everyone or anyone who shows up. This could be 0 people, but this could just be the 2 of us for an evening. I am, Sarah Marks. I write under the pen name SR Marks for my fantasy work, and with me is my editor, Samantha Chapman. I get editor.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I do freelance proofreading and editing and everything in between. So it was a lot of fun to work on this. So I'm excited to be here.
So for those of you who are like from outside of my little bubble, Samantha and I met about a year and a half ago at a return from COVID market event that the city of Lowell put together, the Lowell Cultural Council, who actually gave me a grant to get this book edited by Samantha, who is a local editor
Yep.
to Lowell. And one of the things we decided to do was we would do classes. That worked out differently than I think either of us expected. Not bad, but not like, "Oh
No.
my god, exactly what we wanted." But also different. And then as I was planning all these live streams for this Kickstarter, I kept thinking, I mean, do people wanna listen to me talk for an hour? I could do it, but do people want it? And the one person who has joined us, has not told us yet if that is what they want. But, person or people who are watching this in the replay, because this will be up as a replay if you missed part of it, um,
I popped
leave your
out chat so
questions
I
in
can
the
see chat.
comments or in the chat now. There should be a live chat for you to leave questions on. I don't have a lot of the fun features that, if I on this system StreamYard that, like, people could leave me private messages, and I could put up banners and brand it, but every time I click on those buttons, it's like, "You need to upgrade," and I'm like, "But I don't, do
But
I?"
actually, I don't.
So my thought for this Kickstarter live chat, because it's the second to last Sunday, there'll be one more Sunday, is we talk about the book, and I have some of the draft copies because I'm still waiting for the final copies. Um, things I forgot to grab before I sat down. So I have 2 of the draft copies, neither of which I think you ultimately read because I changed. There were 3. This is 2 of 3, and you can grab them as tiers. It's like high level tiers, because I'm annotating them and going through and thinking,
Oh, that's so
"Ooh,
fun.
yikes." That so
Because
one
you
thing
were
I
working on this for like 20 years before I saw it, right?
Yeah, the first draft was written in 1994. No, that's when I graduated high school. 2004, 10 years later, because I had a dream about a woman having to tell a bunch of people on the bus that they were dead and they could not go skiing and haunt the ski resort. And as I was reading the first draft again, I was like, "Oh, that made it. That literally made it into the story." And then promptly got taken out in future drafts because while it was clever, it wasn't working with, like, everything. Like, her job wasn't to tell this to people. She wasn't the devil yet. Um, she was being hired to be the devil. But
Mhm.
over the years, it's evolved, and while I haven't gotten into these other versions, as I, like, look over the covers, I'm like, "Oh, like, these were, like, temporary covers that I made." Um, one, it said coming May. It's really hard to see. Coming May 2019. We're a couple years off of that. Um, and then it just has the details for some of my, like, Jane Austen modernizations under a very different pen name. So it's like, "Oh, I didn't really give a fuck." I was literally making a draft for myself so I could sit and read it like a book while I edited. Little did I know at that time, because this is like the second book I was ready to like jump feet first into publishing and editing. I don't edit like that. I edit with the draft open on my computer, rereading it as I go, and with an outline of what I want to have change. So it's not, so, like, I have all these journals now with, like, chapter 1, here's what's gotta change, chapter 2, here's what's gotta change, but I've never really sat down and read the book version of it. So
But it's a
there's,
neat
like,
artifact. It's a fun thing to have.
It really is kinda cool, like, you can see the notes I was attempting to make in places, like, this one says, "Was just rent $1,000? Like, next year of rent at $1,000 a month," and I'm like, "Well, if this was like, there were 2 different timelines I was playing with, one was, like, 2004, the other was, like, today, and then I ended up going all the way back to the 1990s, which is when it takes place, in the final version, but it was like, would $1,000 a month of rent be realistic? And, like, here in New England now, no, obviously, um, but in 1994, $1,000 rent would be really high, depending on where you live, so, um I ended up just, like, removing those kinda details because I don't remember what I paid in rent in 1994. I remember what I paid in 2004, but, ugh, I mean, it's like it's such a you don't know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Um,
And you can do research for that kind of thing, and
yeah,
2 or 3 people will appreciate it, but it you can also leave it out.
yeah,
And most people won't notice.
and they won't notice, but also because there was hints of this in the original version. I kind of wanted to lean into this idea of her perspective, Samantha at that time, but now Joan, her perspective of her parents being almost robotic and disconnected to her. But so every time, so there's scenes where she's like, "Oh, her parents are acting normal again," and I'm like, "Oh, but I'm reading as a 46-year-old rather than a 24-year-old."
Yeah.
Who was like, "I don't
Sorry,
know
I'm still
anything,
messing with this light.
don't worry about it." Um,
So
so
weird.
there were these weird changes over time, and then, of course, shifting into Death as your main narrator, was the final version only. So, reading things that led up to it, like, in this one specifically, there are committee meeting minutes, I think, um, and it's supposed to be one of the demons,
Like,
taking the
taking the
minutes,
minutes.
but
Oh, that's so
because
weird.
things always end up in chaos, because you have too many dominant personalities in those search committee meetings, like, you can't have Elizabeth Tudor and Julius Caesar in the same room and not expect there to be problems, even when they're, like, in collaboration.
Oh, I love that they kind of end up being friends, like,
Yeah,
it's just
so, like,
really funny to me.
they're pretty much competitive, like, frenemies almost, like, they're doing their own thing, and then um, you've got the Picard Northanger, like, contingent, like, that you think they're on the same page, but and they are, but they're just all, like, thinking of their own interests, whether it be to take control or to step back and not want control. And really, honestly, if Death had just, like, stepped in and be like, "Here's what we're gonna do," but that's not
He
his
didn't want to.
he definitely did not want to. He would have been very happy to never do anything again. I I mean, he would have been severely depressed and with as one eternal being can descend into, like, the worst phase of your existence. Um, I don't wanna say he was suicidal because he's not. He's
No,
not
that
he's
means
like,
something really different.
there's no sense of ending this in his sense of desire. It's like, "How can I get out of this?" It's more like a, "Can I just sit and watch people do stuff?" And as some friends and I were trying to write the blurb, we're like, "He's automated this." Like, Christina's role as the devil has been to almost automate everything so that nobody has to put their fingers on anything, and,
Mhm.
um well, it costs her magic significantly, which is why she burns out and has to retire when she does. Um, it's really like, "Oh, he couldn't just come in and start, like, walking around our world and claiming souls. There's too many people dying for that."
Yeah. I
Um,
think there's a mention too where, like, they used to have this Grim Reaper program, and then there's
yeah.
just too many people now.
I don't know if you remember this. There was a show, I wanna say it wasn't Grimm, that was the one with the supernatural, like, demon hunting. But I think it was called Reaper, and it was, like, early 2000s about the people who die and then they become Grim Reapers, and there's, like, a cohort of them. It's great. Mandy Patinkin's in it. Um, actually, he was
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, it was their existence after their death, still living in the world, having to be the one to claim souls because the world needed Grim Reapers, and how did they look different than they had in life, but we saw them as they truly were. So if they ran into a loved one, they would never appear the same way twice, and I
Mm.
really, like, considered leaning into that a couple times, but I never ultimately did. Meanwhile, I just keep making fun stuff. So I was before we got on the live stream, I showed Samantha the brochure that I made for Patala, um, because this is a retirement community. And what do you do when you're looking for your retirement community? You go and you collect brochures that list all the amenities. So you have the Patala logo, which evolved over time itself. It used to be like three different symbols, like the arrows, the clock, and then the globe. And I was like, why am I doing three? Let's combine them into the extent of my artistic skills is creating that logo from other clip art on Canva. But it really has, like, very little detail, like, it's got pictures of things you can do and a list of amenities, but there's no, um and their mission is to help you transition to a new life when you're ready, like, it's this sense of there's nothing specific here, and, you don't get it until, like, the day before you die. So it doesn't show up till what do you care? So the character Anne, who is one of the candidates for the replacement devil, she she's the one who's finding them. She volunteers at a retirement home, so she's seeing them. They're registering in her brain, which is what puts her on death's radar, not the her meeting all the qualifications and having power. Um, but she's on the brink of discovering something that she shouldn't even notice.
Right, because most people would only run into, like, 1 in their lifetime, maybe,
Maybe
but
2 if
because
you're, like, taking care of like, I before my grandparents died, I was very involved in their lives, I was always around. So, maybe I would see 3 in my lifetime, but they would have been so far apart in time that I wouldn't have registered it, and if it's somebody
Mhm.
either going to or in a retirement facility, you might expect to see those kinda things. So, I wanted it to be the sense of something we could just not look at and throw in the trash, versus something that someone who's giving it some thought might be like, "Okay, I keep seeing these. Why are people being recruited out of retirement homes into another retirement home?" Like, that alone is kinda sketchy. Um, but so I've been digging through my stuff at the house because I've been in, recovery for a month, and I realized I didn't tell everybody in my life that I was gonna be, unaccessible for a month, like, I told my colleagues, and my boss, and my family, or the important family, and, like, the closest friends, and I was like, "I had surgery a month ago." That's always fun, but now that I've been home for, like, a month, I'm getting, like, cabin fever, and I wanna just, like, do things, so I've been cleaning out, like, drawers and boxes, and I found these super cute little acrylic pins of death
I
that
have one of
go
those. It's on my pin board.
yeah, I'm like, "How do I only have 4 left? I thought I gave them all away at conferences." So and events, so I'm like, "No, they'll just be another add-on for the Kickstarter campaign." And then, Heather, who created the Christina tarot card to go with the death one, and this is only one of a kind t-shirt right now of death, but I like it because you can see, like, the purple that Jess put in she gave
That's
me, like,
nice.
4 or 5 different colors of cards when she gave me the final card, and she's like, "And here's how to add any color you want." I'm like, "But I love purple, so I'm not changing anything with it." Um, but, but this is such a nice it's a really nice t-shirt, I hope it doesn't fade, when I wash it because like, nice quality. If I do t-shirts, for future I mean, if people like t-shirts instead of, like, mugs or tote bags or stickers or acrylic pins, let me know because I'll look into t-shirts because 'cause we'll do this again even if I don't finish this Kickstarter, fully funded. I'm doing this again. This is so much more engaging than just releasing the book, and since the next book out will be one of the Austen books under the other pen name, um, that means, I have a whole new category of content to look through, and I've already been on Etsy, looking at things because there's so much Jane Austen content out there. And then I've talked to a lot of local artists, and I met someone yesterday at an event, in Chelmsford who has this great aesthetic. Um, I don't know where I put the piece I bought from her, but I bought this cute little, um, illustrated thing that she did about, it's something like, "Maybe I don't have deja vu, maybe I can see the future," and I'm like, "Yes, that's totally what an oracle would feel like as a child before
Oh,
they knew
totally.
want or what they can do." And so, she and I were chatting a little about, like, her taking this on and, doing something else. You have sirens.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I live right by the
You
fire
live in
station.
living in downtown Lowell, you know.
Yeah.
I hear them too. I live on a very major street in the city, in this, like, the suburban part of the city, so every so often I hear it, but it's also raining out, so
Mhm.
it I'm sure that dampens the sound.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I had the mic set so it wouldn't pick that
No,
up.
doesn't matter. We lost our one participant, but that's still 2 people more than I usually have. It's usually literally just me, and doing live streams, and that's fine. Eventually, like, there should be an audience someday,
There
but
will, there will.
who knows? I just have to keep creating content, and I have very little energy for it. But next year, so while it's just the 2 of us, even though this is going to continue, the next book I write is going to be in the other dark fantasy series that I do, the Frozen Wasteland one, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
Lovecraftian, and I will be in touch about you editing
Excellent.
because, um, I think all 3 books in the series could use a little once over, and this is a relatively short book. It's usually, like, just, uh, 30 to 40,000 words. It's never very long. Um, but all 3 books are that long, so, there might be some wiggle room. I'm waiting to hear
Awesome.
from, again, the Lowell Cultural Council. If you're in
Great.
Massachusetts, always look to your cultural council to help with creative work.
Yeah, I never would have thought of that, so that's an amazing tip.
You know, I don't know if she'll ever be watching this, but Rona, my friend who is on the cultural council, specifically got on so that she could help other writers because she herself is a writer and coach. And if you were in the Lowell area on the 5th of November, we're doing
Yep.
a workshop. Samantha and I, where this is our last attempt at a workshop, I think, in the end. But we'll have Rona, who is a book coach, coming to talk about what a coach does compared to what an editor does. And um, then we'll have Laura Brown, who also writes romance, and she's going to talk about it from a traditional publishing point of view so that people who want to go the traditional route know what's expected of them potentially when they work with editors because
Yeah.
it is increasingly important to work with an editor before you submit to make sure you have something that they want, um,
Yeah, and I'll be
before.
honest, I leaped straight into freelancing, so I'm really interested in this workshop. I
Yeah,
really am interested in learning about other people in sort of that extended editing sphere because I
mhm,
don't really know what's involved
yeah,
in traditional publishing.
yeah,
And
when
people
people
ask me and like, I don't know, I just do this.
I was talking with a group of people yesterday at the studio that I was at, um, for this like, I was there to shop, I wasn't there to talk about writing, but we ended up talking about writing because 3 of us were authors, and one of the woman who runs the studio, she's been traditionally published, and we realized that, we have a lot of writing support groups in the world, and we have a lot of editing and polishing support groups in the world, but we have very little about taking that work and what you should expect to publish.
Mm,
And the actual process of getting an agent, working with editors,
definitely.
the marketing. What are your options for marketing? What will your publisher cover if you go traditional? How will you know? Like
Yeah, that's very important.
the woman who was traditionally published, she happens to write nonfiction, but she realized that, a lot of people don't realize that your publisher will you the reason you're getting paid so little in most cases is because your publisher's fronting the cost and you're paying it back in sales. So if you want to go and speak at events as a nonfiction author, your publisher should be doing that for you to make back that money at those events that they put in. So that you should have a publicist. You should have all this from the publisher, not something
Right.
you do on your own. But at the same time, you don't have the freedom to just start doing ads on Amazon or Facebook necessarily. You might have to get permission to put out additional content. You can't run a Kickstarter.
It's a lot more collaborative.
So it's very different. Whereas self-publishing, yeah, I have total control over who I work with, but at the same time, I eat every cost and I have to figure out a way to make it back, which is part of the reason I'm trying Kickstarter as a way to make some of these costs back. And also the reason, in my case, that I tried the Cultural Council as a way to see if there'll be local support for publishing. But it's given me a lot more insight into, talking to everybody locally, meeting people who are doing different things makes you realize how disconnected we are as a writing community, which isn't a foreign concept. I mean, writing is kind of inherently solitude,
A little
but
bit.
also if we don't talk to each other, we don't get to know people who can help us or what
Right.
to expect. So yeah. So that's
Yeah.
my plan for the next year. Ooh, we have a new person joining us. Hello, new person. I can't see who you are. I just see that there's one person and or two people or how many. But if you want to say something or ask a question in the comments or the live chat, you can. Um, we'll answer
Uh,
anything.
well,
Well,
I hope that you'll take a lot of time to work on your book because I am booked solid through about March right now.
wow. Okay, I will be in touch tomorrow for Um,
Which is
yeah,
a
no,
good feeling and also
actually,
totally
the timeline
overwhelming.
is sort of similar because, the next book wouldn't come out till, like, this the Kickstarter would be this time next year. Um,
I had someone hire me for a 3-book series that's starting in
that's
January, so
fantastic.
it's great, but it's also so much work, so
Yeah, no, totally so much work. Um, yeah, wow, that's exciting. I always like when people get, like, when, like, coaches and editors get, like, long-term work
Mhm.
because that means, 1, you've done good work and someone trusts you,
Definitely.
but also it means that, like, you have, like, a little more confidence in your not just, like, your skills, but also, like, your income.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, it's a nice chunk of change for sure. But I mean, there's absolutely no like compliment that I can get that makes me feel as good as somebody coming back and hiring me again.
Yeah,
So,
and I feel that, like, even though, like, this is like, it's confidence building to have people buy multiple books by you to
mhm.
be that confident that they will enjoy it. Um, but what's equally, like, confident building is when they get really involved, like, they keep coming back, they wanna give you input, they wanna give you perspective, they wanna correct things for you. Like, sometimes I
Yep.
get my back hairs up about someone being like, "I needed to fix here's your long list of problems." But I am also that person. I'm like, "Here's things you didn't know you did wrong."
Yeah, I mean, I'll get like a lot. I mean, people have always been very, very nice to me, which is
Yeah.
really a lovely thing.
You're the
Uh,
editor.
um, but yeah, but I mean, you can tell me all you want that I've done a good job, but the only thing that really makes me believe that is that you'll spend more money.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but I have gotten several repeat clients, and that makes me feel really lovely. So, it really, I think I'm good at what I do, you know, but
yeah.
it drives it home. It's really nice. I found out that so I work a lot on readsy.com, which is
Mhm.
where I find a lot of my work. The platform matches writers to actually all kinds of services. I'm on
Yeah.
there as an editor, but I think they also do like book covers. I think they might have like agents and
Mhm.
like submission letter people. Like they do a lot of stuff
Yeah,
for self-publishing. Um they're giving me a discount on their fee now because I've worked with them so much.
that's awesome.
Yeah. I saw this little notification. I'm like, okay, like, amazing. So
And I
good
think
website. Highly recommend it.
yeah, I've had a lot of publishing writer friends who have gone to them primarily for editors at this point, but a lot of people also go to Fiverr to find like, I find my copy editor proofreaders
Mm.
on Fiverr because they tend to, like, be building their business.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Well, most of the editors I've worked with, I've either found through, like, meeting people directly or having someone suggest somebody else. Um, because, like, if somebody trusts their editor enough to suggest them,
Yeah.
I'm totally gonna work with that. So I think the woman who's the friend of mine who has done the Austen edits, she's no longer doing editing. So I'm working with somebody that another romance author suggested, because I want someone with a really, like, clear idea of where romance goes, but, like
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
And it's nice that it can be divided up by genre like that. Like
Mhm.
I'll try my hand at anything, but there are definitely things that I specialize in.
Yeah.
And I've gotten into this great little niche for literary RPG,
Mm.
which is this whole I didn't know that this was a trend until I started getting all of these editing requests. But it's literally a prose novel or short story or but a piece of prose in which the characters are functionally inside of an RPG.
Huh.
So they'll be in a
Almost
story where they have levels and stats.
almost like Dungeons& and Dragons.
Sort of, yeah. A lot of it is more like a video game.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of what you'll see called isekai, where they're like, "Oh, I woke up in the body of a character in the game that I was just playing last night, and now I have to wake up. Now I have to go fight dragons and level up." And
See, for me, that sounds like a horror story. And
sometimes it should be.
I've had multiple ideas along those lines, but never, like, the interest in following up. Like, I have this idea for a book that's just single line ideas that my brain came up with. That's all it is, it's all it needs to be, and it's just divided by genre, like, the 4 main genres I feel I could
Right,
write.
just prompts.
Yeah,
Just
like, you go do it, like, everybody write this prompt. I'm sure nobody will come up with the same thing twice. But they're bizarre prompts, like, one after I saw the latest Twin Peaks season, I was like, "Okay, so" it was just like someone wakes up to, like, their imaginary book boyfriend in their house, in their bed, a living being, Tulpa kinda thing, and then they realize their hero, their romantic hero from the book, is a jerk and totally not their type. And everyone's like, "Well, that would be fun." I'm like, "It can't be romance. Romance is happily ever after. This is clearly not. They're terrible."
played a video game kind of like that, but with Korean ball jointed realistic dolls.
Ooh.
It was. I mean, this was it was a romance. It was creepy. I didn't like any of the romance, but it was very creepy and fun. Uh,
I mean,
it
that's
was
when you don't label it like, there's rules to
there
the
was
romance genre where, like, if it doesn't end up with a happily ever after, it's not romance.
oh
Doesn't
no,
matter.
it did. I just didn't
Yeah.
care for any of the happily ever afters. No, but there was a magic wizard involved. But she wakes up and her 5 ball jointed dolls are all real people.
Ooh. See, for me, it's still horror, like, waking up to any living person who wasn't there when I went to bed, but
This
mirrors something that I know in the real
now
world.
see the one I liked better in the same series, I like some weird video games,
It's fair.
was the
Video
one
games can be
where
good.
day 1 she wakes up and there's a basket of kittens and bunnies that have just appeared out of nowhere.
Again, the beginning of a horror story for
Day
me.
2, they are kitten and bunny boys.
Oh, this feels very anime based.
Oh, these are all Korean.
Yeah, okay, okay, speaking of Korean weirdness,
Game is called
Subway.
Dandelion, which is brought to you. The music is amazing.
If somebody's watching this on the replay and is looking for that, there's so much fun. I was I was watching I think it was, John Oliver talked about this a couple weeks ago, about the Korean obsession with Subway. Actually, it might have been
Yes!
months ago.
The commercials, like the Subway romance commercial.
They're not even commercials. They're full on
They're full-on romance stories, and they just happen to take place at Subway.
I've worked at Subway. It's in this book for that very reason. And I was like, and they're going on about how wonderful things are, and I'm like, this is from someone who worked at Subway. Do not trust anything beyond the sub. Everything else is disgusting. Tuna, we used to say when we were making tuna, do you want some tuna with your mayo?
Yeah, pretty much.
And this is the days when they were legitimately foot-long subs, but they used to, in the 90s, it wasn't just you sliced the sub bread and then you put everything on either half. We used to dig out like a canal in the middle of the bread. It was like a U-shaped cutout that you then had to fill up. It wasn't that deep. It wasn't that wide. It was just like a canal, and everything got stuffed in there. And then you put the little cutout back on top. Yeah, the King of Subway story plot, like the whole Subway thing was going to be much longer, and it is in the original. The whole King of Subway, like for a while, I was like, "That's really obnoxious. That's really mean." And I'm like, "No, this is Joan. Joan's the worst. Of course, she calls him the King of Subway." But yes, the idea of a sandwich artist.
Yep, I knew that. I knew that one.
Yeah.
I knew sandwich artist.
Yeah, and you couldn't get a raise unless you could be precise in a specific amount of time. And at the library at the university, we're like a building away from the subway on campus. So you tend to get that when you're desperately in need of lunch and there's nothing else appealing. That's the only time you go there. But you can see like the slowest people probably have never gotten a raise, and I'm positive nothing has changed at the corporate level to the extent that this would not be true anymore. Like I watch them and can count out precisely like who this person is following the rules. They have given me 4 slices of tomato. This person
I can just imagine trying to memorize how many of what you have to put on one.
It's pretty easy. It's generally like in 6s. 6 slices of pickles, 6 slices of black olives. Not olives, slices, like the little slivery. 6 of them on a foot-long
God forbid you get entire olives.
No,
this is like the stuff that's still embedded in my brain from being a grocery store cashier though. Bananas are 4011, and I will neber forget it for as long as I live. I don't want to remember it. I don't want to know it, but I'm never going to forget it.
Yep. I call them future alarm codes and numbers. Yeah, like you're never going to guess my PIN because it is the most random thing that I can't forget in my brain.
Yep.
Has nothing to do with my life, not somebody's birthday or phone number or anything.
Nope, it's the number of bananas.
It's the code for bananas. I'm going to write this down because that's making its way into something. Like conversation somewhere. PIN code equals code for bananas.
You're going to read that in like a month and you'll have no idea what you're talking about.
I will. It's on my
this is the problem that's the problem I have when I take notes is I'll read them back and I have no clue what I mean.
Oh yeah. I have like a stack of paper because I'm getting my office reorganized, and it's like, what does Joan look like? And I'm like, what? I know what Joan looks like. What does Anne look like? Chubby. But that's not accurate. That's what Joan thinks Anne looks like. But she really, I'm like, what was I doing that I had to write this out on a pad of paper? And then every so often I'll go through like the Austin stuff. Like here's the Austin stack. And it's like, but there was one that was like figure skating rules have changed since the 90s. And I'm like, I gotta know that.
Like, was there any figure skating in your Austin books?
No. There's none in the Austin books. I keep considering it for the
I have these little like pocket-sized notebooks so that I can throw them in my purse. Right now, all they are
literally for a good notebook.
Literally, all they are right now is check marks of the stuff that I'm working on every week.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a total bullet journaler. And there was a point in this Kickstarter where I was like, you know what I should do? I should get everybody journals. I should have the Patala logo put on journals, and I'm like, "Oh, wait, I'm the only one who's gonna like that." No, my sister is sending me a text message. She has a 4-month-old right now
Aw.
who is finally starting to sleep through the night, but, she's like, I'm gonna call you once this baby goes down for a nap," and I'm like, because she's in California, so it's only 3:30.
Right.
So I'll have to tell her, "Why don't you wait at least a half an hour?"
Well, baby's gonna wake back up by then.
Yeah. She's the cutest thing. This book isn't getting dedicated to her. Actually, I think it is getting dedicated to her. Actually, I think I did. Oh, I mean, I planned on it from, like, the
Oh, yeah,
moment she
completely, absolutely. No questions about it.
like, my f the I have a lot of fun with book dedications. I did a on the Austen side of things, I did a whole series of videos behind the dedication where I explain why this person was selected and what the dedication means and how it connects to the book because it's important, is that it somewhat connect to the book. Um, but for the horror stuff, it's never really been, like, the specific person that needs to have this dedication to them. But for this series, it is pretty important that I be
Mm.
careful because this is the near and dear series. This is the one I've been, like, so very anxious about letting other people read. So, picking someone who can't read yet
There you go, perfect.
and who will love me, presumably, by the time she can read these.
Well, I do think you did a really great job. I had a lot of fun reading it.
You know, every I thank you, first of all, because it is very important for me to acknowledge that I did hear that, and now I have promptly forgotten it and will question everything again. Um, but, the thing about writing something for nearly 20 years is that you keep working it over and over, and I feel like there's a first book. It's like the first album for musicians. It's the first book.
Yeah.
We spend so much time feeding and caring and editing and tweaking and adjusting that the first book can really feel like someone's baby, and I see a lot of authors who are like, "This is my new child." I'm like, "It's not. It's a book. You need to, like, divorce yourself from it being yours now. You have put it into the world. It's your college student, not your baby." Um, and
That's a
it
good way to think about it. You've
and
raised
it
it already, now it has to go.
Yep, you have birthed it, now send it into the world like you're an elephant or a cat. Actually, a cat's probably more accurate, like, the kittens are gone immediately. Um And I worry that, like, book 2 and book 3 and book 4 won't be as good. Like, that's the new narrative in my head. That's like, it won't be as good because 'cause you're not giving it 20 years. I'm like, "No one wants to wait 20 years for this next book." But I also have been writing it for 20 years in various forms, and there's a lot of, like it's farther away from me than I can grab, but I've written this whole series once.
Yeah, you know where
It's
it's going.
all fan fiction. It's like Buffy, Lord of the Rings, even things like not under copyright. Anything that like piqued my interest, I like wove it into the original version of this fan fiction. And now I have to strip it all out and actually find a story that is worth telling, which is why the next book in the series won't come out for 2 years. I don't need 20 years to make this a good book, but I need to give it some attention
Yeah,
so that it won't be the second child, the second album in the sense of rushed for profit and not given the attention it needs.
right. But, like, yeah, you're not starting from scratch, you know where it's going.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely know where it's going. Next, we get to meet, next we get into the Picards. We get into that bullshit. Um, and this is like the catchphrase for this series is, a whole lot of power and very few fucks, or a
Yeah, I saw that, that was
very few fucks. Um, and this idea that I mean, when they don't remember who they are, they're not terrible people because they don't have a sense of like what they can do and what they could be and who they have once been. But they also struggle with where do they fit in the world when you're not the heir? You don't have anything obligated. So in the Picard family specifically, the oldest daughter is the heir. It's a matrilineal line that's always like magically happens that way. For a couple years, I was gonna like go in the Benny Gesserit direction where like they control their reproduction. And I was like, we're not there yet. We're not at Benny. We're not in sci-fi. It's magic. It's like magic gives them girls first. They know that boys first. Boys are the worst. Um, but there could be a boy second. There's repetitive twins in this family. The second daughter's always the oracle, always the one who drives the family, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and as I craft the outline for the next book, which focuses on the third daughter in the family, Sabine, um, recognizing that she has a purpose. She's this creature that they call an elemental, which is, let's be honest, it's Buffy, but bigger. If Buffy met, like, a fire-wielding angel, like, she could control fire, she thinks that's what her job is to protect the family, is to keep, even if it means her own sacrifice, but in the scope of if you're perpetually ready to sacrifice yourself, how do you plan a life? How do you
Mm.
figure out what you want in the world? And she has to make these decisions. She is 20, 22. I think she's 20 when the book starts. So she's right in the same place that Anne and Joan are, and making very different decisions. And the second perspective of the book is her best friend Carly, who they call each other their soulmates, in the sense that it's non-sexual. I mean, yeah, if they lived to now and were like, I mean, they would be about 40 something now. They might turn to each other and be like, "Yeah, let's have a throuple with our or a polyamorous with our husbands." Um, Actually, they probably would have a polyamorous relationship with their husbands. They are all very connected. But this sense of who Carly knows who she is, who she wants to be, whether she's right or not is the issue. Um, but Sabine doesn't know. Sabine doesn't can't figure it out, and that is her journey through the second book, is figuring out who she is and what she wants. And then it trickling out to all the people around her. This idea of being who we are is a big theme in the rest of the series. Death having somewhat of a crisis along that of who am I in this world? And I think Death and the final New Devil, who we won't reveal for spoilers because it's still a week before the books. It's actually a couple months before it'll be available on Amazon, but, the sense that Death is going to be the narrator that connects all this, that's gonna open us up, that might periodically come into the story and explain things to his current devil, who might not understand these dynamics,
Yeah.
and sort of fill the place of reader as we go forward, because Sabine and Carly understand the magic system they're in, but who else
Right, but
does?
the new devil probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
She hasn't been around it all so long.
And there is one of the other, like, so the Northingers, other than, Gilbert, who is the one who created the ride and created the family, they don't come until about book 4 of the series. You can read about them and other things, but, in this series specifically, they won't be coming in till then, when their latest heir, Reed, um, who is not at all like, trying to think of who inspired him, and I'm like, "Oh, that's terrible." But I ripped his name off of, did you ever see that movie, The Covenant?
No, I don't see a lot of movies.
So bad. I love it. Bad, I love it. It's on, I believe it's on Hulu right now, if you have an hour to 2 of time,
Mhm.
and it's, The Craft, but with boys. So all of that feminism, feminine sense of the craft, like women, witches, taking control, claiming your
None
power,
of that.
none of that, because men, but you have a foursome of teenage boys who are assholes. And the biggest asshole in the group, his name is Reed, and he's very Draco Malfoy kind of asshole.
Mhm.
So he's got, like, the white blonde hair and the appropriate cut to look like Draco, and I was like, "But that's a great character." He has so much potential for this, like, the movie frames magic as a drug, so you become addicted to it, and it drains and destroys you if you abuse it. But if you can control your use of it, it can be helpful. Uh, and it's quite clear that Reed's going to be the magic abuser in this foursome.
Got it.
They're too young for that to happen. Um, so it's and the best part of this movie, Sebastian Stan
Oh,
in this movie.
alright.
Yeah, he plays the bad guy too. Like, it's not a spoiler at this point. It's like a 15-year-old movie. But he's like it's like baby Sebastian Stan, like, it's bugging. And I've been watching it, like, I've been following Sebastian Stan since this movie because I was like, "He's the greatest bad guy in a crappy movie." But I saw Reed's name, and I was like, "That's who I want Reed Northanger to be, this entitled boy who could abuse his magic, who is entitled, but something's gonna happen to him that's gonna shift his perspective." Um, and I'm not giving that if you want to hear about that, if you're watching the replay and really wanna hear about the Reed Northanger journey, you do have to buy the $500 ticket. I'm not telling you any like, I can tell you about book 2, how we're gonna but everything after that, like, Sabine's husband's been mentioned, Carly's husband's been mentioned, Reed too has a partner, but you don't get to find anything out about them until the books come out, or you want spoilers. Or you're Samantha and will very likely read them before everybody else. But I have, like, printed the outline of the book, like, I stripped everything from the fan fiction stuff and then published this, like, super thick outline of what I wanna have happen, and everything has changed. As I read this, I'm like, "I should do this again with the updated stuff," so, like, I can just open up a book and be like, "Here we are. Here are my beats. Here's what's gonna happen next."
That's really helpful to
Yeah.
have, definitely.
Especially when you have a long series that
Yeah.
you're like, "This is" the more I think about this, like, I need to write about, Sabine's older sister, Rhiannon. I need to write about her older sister, Margot, the Oracle. I need to write about Carly's family. I need to write about so and so's family, Reed's family. Like, the Northingers are not minor. They're just not the main focus of the series at this point.
Yeah, they just have their own entire series somewhere else.
I mean, within the romance, the rom-com series, they kinda do without, like if anybody the reason there's an add-on bonus item for Love from Northanger Parks, Katie, my rom-com book, is because it takes place in the theme park the Northangers built, and Reed's aunt Diana is in it, and Sabine's sister Rhiannon is in it. And not just like walk on, walk off characters like, "Oh, that person's so and so." No, like, they have a major point at the end of the book, and some of the short stories in that came with that series relate um, to some of this. Like, the short story that's the sort of the launching into this book, the prequel book, Margot's Shade, you get a different point of view of that story, that romance story, which was inspired by, Clarice de Winter and Athos in The Three Musketeers. Because if you watched the 1992, I think was that movie with, Kiefer Sutherland
I
and,
think so.
um, they changed Clarice de Winter's name to Sabine, and that's the first time I'd ever heard their name Sabine, and then I met, like, a handful of Sabines within, like, 5 or 6 years of that, and I was like, "Where did this name come from? How did" but I've always been like, that tragedy of their romance is always, like, sat at the core of the series, like, that's a big moment for a couple, and what if they're
Mm.
godlike couples who keep doing this to each other? That's shitty behavior
Mhm.
taken too that's a toxic relationship
Yeah, that
on
sounds like gods.
cocaine, and that's, like that's it, like, they have all of this, and they can't even treat each other well.
Yep.
Yeah.
That sounds like gods.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna bring in, and this is so there is the bad guy in the series is essentially the monotheistic god. But he has a really good reason for his bad behavior, and it's in relation to the douchebaggery of the others around him. Like, "You're all assholes. This is my perspective." Just
Everybody
like,
stop.
the Garden of Eden is specifically a pocket dimension where he's like, "I just want my own shit. Go away." And they're like,
This is
"Sorry,
my treehouse.
sorry, can't." I'm like, he has good reason. Like, yes, eventually they regret those decisions, but at the time they're like, "No, we play together." Like, not everybody wants to play with you. You're too
I love it. It sounds like a lot of fun.
like, I have a lot of as I write him and develop him and think about, like, those motivations and those wounds, and I'm like, "This poor little cinnamon roll just
Just a
needs
little guy.
just a little god who wants just to have his own little bubble of fun." And then they come in with a snake and they destroy that. And then the people, like, the other, like, those who serve him are, like, super manipulative on this at the same time. I'm like, and I'm watching, like, tonight I will be watching House of the Dragon, which is all about, like, right now it's the, like, how do you go from good intention to everybody dies, burn each other with our dragons, and you're watching it happen, and it's a thin tightrope line of, I thought I could do this, but other people around me made it impossible.
Mm.
And you forget that we are you're back and forth on things because if you are listening to others and hearing their perspectives, you're going to be influenced by that. So
Yeah, I like that.
so that's some of the stuff that's coming up. I really love this series. Obviously, I mean, the Austin series is fun because it's romance, and how can you hate romance? I mean, I know people do, but I think they secretly don't. They've just
I think
been
they think they do and they haven't read any that's good.
yeah, I mean, there's plenty of great romance out there. And there's also romantic tragedy and romantic suspense and paranormal romance. And like you can find a romantic story in almost everything you read. But this one's the series that like sits in my head and I have to think about before I fall asleep at night or I won't fall asleep. Like, this is my comfort series. So but we're about at 7.
Wow.
As per usual, our conversations easily flow for an hour.
Yeah, they really do.
Um, and if you ever end up at, like, a workshop with the 2 of us, yeah,
Yeah,
we'll just if nobody comes,
we'll
we
just
can
go.
easily talk to each other, because we like a lot of the same things. So
Yeah, it's been fun.
So if you are to wrap up, thank you for the few people who got to who actually remembered to show up tonight. I will do better. We will do this again next week. I don't know if Samantha will be the one to join me, or maybe I can get one of our 2 artists, either Jess, who is in California, or Heather, who is local also, to talk about the artwork side of this because by the end of the series there will be a full tarot deck of the
Nice.
characters. Whether I make them on Midjourney, the AI art board, which I have an obsession with, or I hire an artist. Like the important characters, they're getting made by artists. The minor people that are just like fun, that's a Midjourney kind of thing. But there will be one of these next week, and then the 31st is the last day for this Kickstarter. So support, spread the word.
Button
Uh,
up, button
there's there's a couple more bonuses coming on. Soap will be next week. I have had a friend who makes soap, and she's making a set of soaps. A set, well, it's one soap, many bars. Uh, for this project, it's kind of got an almond scent. I'm very excited. And then Heather has allowed me to print really nice 8.5 by 11 prints of Christina as the devil, so that those can be bonus content items, and not for me to hoard, not for me to just plaster around a room, uh, because it's a really fun illustration that she did. But if you wanna keep up with, what I put on this channel, which will be fantasy, dark fantasy story, audiobook content, and maybe conversations like this more often, like and subscribe, the YouTube stuff that we always have to do because YouTube's game and level god, the algorithm demands that we all say like and subscribe because that is technology as a god modern wise. So thank you, Samantha, for joining me. Thank you for editing this book.
Yeah, thank
And
you for having me.
have a great night, everybody, or morning, whenever you write, wherever you watch this.
Bye.